Hi, everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion, a glimpse into self-care for postdocs and PhD students. So before we get started, we always like to introduce INET and what we stand for. INET stands simply for International Networking for people in New York or scientists in New York City. We've been around for over a decade now, and we have a very simple mission: is to support and offer professional development activities for international scientist community in New York City and actually beyond. So we provide informational sessions like one of these today. We also provide career development events, networking, and social opportunities for people in the area, as well as we share various types of research opportunities inside and outside the US. It's all a big, nice international scientist community that we're trying to build for the last decade. We have members in at INET from all different institutes surrounding New York City area and as well outside of New York City, as well as internationally now, as we're growing. So everyone, please welcome to join. I'll post in a moment, once I'm done with this presentation, our links to all our social media, so you can subscribe to our newsletter. So watch out for those links in the chat. So as always, we always need helping hands at INET. So we have multiple different positions open. If you don't see anything that's very obvious or you want to do, please reach out to us. We can definitely always find something interesting for you to do. It's a really good way for you guys to build soft skills for any future jobs that you might want to have in the academia and outside of the academia. So soft skills are very important, and INET is a very great way to do that, being part of the leadership. You might have seen us around at your institutes. So we have representation at Einstein, NYU Langone, MSKCC, I believe, and many others, Cold Spring Harbor at SUNY. So if you see one of our faces, please say hi, talk to us. We're always happy to get more people involved with INET. And as I'm done with this presentation, I want to hand it over to Janice, who's had the pleasure of putting this panel discussion together. So Janice, to you.
Hi, thanks so much, Gabby. So good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Janice Nembeng, and I'm a physician and PhD candidate at Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And today I'm here as the institution representative at INET NYC for Mount Sinai. So I want to welcome you all to our webinar entitled A Glimpse into Self-Care, a guide for postdoc and graduate students. And basically, during our time together, we will dive into the topic of self-care with our panel of experts, and we will then conclude the evening with questions from the audience and then a take-home message. So now, without any further delay, let me introduce the panel that we are going to have. First, we will start with Mrs. Jones. So she has a 2 decade of experience in working as a medical social worker. She has been working at Inova Health System for about 5 years, which maintain a magnet status, and she has experience in behavioral health, utilization management, and hospital cases. Our next panelist is going to be Dr. Urania Clark. Dr. Clark is an associate professor in the neurology department at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. She completed a PhD in clinical psychology at Boston University, specializing in clinical neuropsychology before completing a fellowship training in neuropsychology and neuroimaging at Brown University. In 2013, she joined the faculty at Mount Sinai, where she directs the Neuropsychology and Neuroimaging Laboratory, which investigate the neural correlates and behavioral impact on stress, such as early life stress and social discrimination. Dr. Clark is also the Director of Research Development at Mount Sinai Center of Scientific Diversity and previously served as an Associate Director for the MD PhD training program here at Mount Sinai. She has also served on several federal grant review panels and has published over 40 peer-reviewed articles. Dr. Clark has received many awards for her research, including a Women in Science Award for the Medical Research Council in the United Kingdom, a Rising Star Award from the National Institute on Aging, and the American Geriatric Society, and in 2021, she was named among the top 50 scientists, entrepreneurs, and investors in New York State in recognition of her work to enhance equity in biomedicine, including a 2020 Nature article addressing inequities in the sciences. And last but not least, Dr. Aydin Ustoun. Dr. Aydin is dedicated child and adolescent psychiatrist currently serving as a PGY4 fellow at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. Originally from Turkey, he earned his medical doctorate from the Pamukkale University School of Medicine, where he also completed a residency in child and adolescent psychiatry in 2018 before pursuing further training in the United States. He completed his general psychiatry residency at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School and later joined Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School as a fellow in child and adolescent psychiatry. In addition to psychodynamic psychotherapy and childhood psychiatric disorder, Dr. Aydin has an interest in ADHD and biomarker in psychiatric disorder, on which he has published several research papers. He is actively involved in the education of medical students, having served as a teaching assistant, course co-lead, and medical student liaison at Rutgers, and having been a trainee multiple times himself and having interacted with other trainees in various settings, Dr. Aydin deeply values mental health and overall well-being. Thank you all for being here. So now, spotlight for everyone. So now, without further ado, let me jump right in. So we will start with you, Dr. Clark. Could you help us understand a little bit better about self-care and help us answer what is the question? What is self-care?
I really love this question, and I think it's something that so many of us have been thinking about recently. I'm sure it's been on everybody's radar since 2020, if not before. It's an essential part of our lives in this moment. And I think it has gone through many different iterations. But the way I like to think about it is that this is basically an approach to how we organize our lives and our time and our activities. And this approach should really help us meet our personal, our social, our academic, and our career goals. And we want to do that in a way that is really balanced and that positions us to really effectively and efficiently achieve our goals. So it's unfortunately not something that we can buy. It doesn't come in, this magic potion, but it's something that we have to strive to achieve, I think, on a daily basis.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Jones, would you like to add anything to what Dr. Clark just said?
So yeah, definitely. Just to piggyback on what she said, to me, self-care is make sure that you have that work-life balance. And a lot of times, when we're in the healthcare field, we tend to not be able to have it because, like, when you're in a hospital, it's 24/7, and it never stops. So you have to come to a point where you have to make a stop mark for your own life balance and your own things that you need to do outside of your workplace.
Yes, thank you. Yes, totally understand that. And how about you, Dr. Aydin? I cannot hear you. Wait.
Oh,
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, I thought I unmuted myself. So I definitely agree with the great points about like why it's important, and I'm glad that we are talking about this topic right now. and I think self-care is, it's actually like one of our minds or brain, like important or essential role, if that makes sense. But sometimes like things get in the way, as Mrs. Jones like pointed out. Sometimes like we kind of like ignore it, like even if we want or not, and then I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about the consequences, and then it will have some effects on us.
Mhm. Okay, thank you so much. And Ms. Jones, what do you think are the potential misconceptions around the concept of self-care that we'd have to be wary about?
So I think the misconceptions are self-care is some people maybe think just getting up and grooming yourself, but self-care is way beyond that. Self-care is taking a pause in your day. If you're having a rough day, it might be just stepping outside of your office and taking a quick walk around, getting some fresh air, and being able to come back and regroup, because a lot of our positions are in our workspace is stressful. But we have to know how to take time to just, be able to take a pause, making sure that you're eating, and sometimes we feel like, oh, my job doesn't require that, but you have to do that for self-care.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Clark, how about you? What do you think are misconceptions that we have to be wary about? Self-care is a term that we tend to use pretty often, but are there things that we need to make sure that we clearly understand about that concept?
Yeah, I think that for many for many years, I think we've been sold the idea that self-care is something you can purchase off the shelf. Oh, I'm going to get this new shampoo or this, new aromatherapy, or something that's going to make your life so much better, and all of a sudden you're going to be able to do everything you want to achieve. And unfortunately, I think it gives us false hope.
Mm-hmm.
And self-care is actually hard to do, which is why I think it's a lifelong activity. It requires us to really understand, like, what are our needs in the moment, right? So, as Ms. Jones mentioned, making sure that we're eating, right? Even like meeting our basic needs, but also our more global and a larger needs for social connection, for living in an equitable society, for everything in between. These, I think, are aspects of self-care that can be overlooked, and they may be misperceived initially.
Okay. Yes, I like that. That self-care has to be understood as if it's a lifelong journey instead of just something in the moment. How about you, Dr. Aydin? Which type of misconception do you think that we have to be cautious about when related to self-care?
I think my colleagues pointed out very well. It's like this is not like one pill or just like one, let's say, therapy kind of therapy that's gonna fit for everyone. I understand it's like most of these companies have some other, of course, understandable. They want to make money, but self care is, I think, very individual, and you would know the best than like anyone else. And it's not a passive like activity. It's a very active, um, like you need to be active during taking care of yourself, to be honest. So sometimes people just think like doom scrolling on social
Mm,
media is self-care, but I tend to disagree with that, because we also need to be mindful when we are using social media. We may actually hurt our well-being, although like trying to do something that actually like, oh, there's something that I enjoy, but it's not always like I'm not like we're not always enjoying with the stimuli we get from social media or the things that we are exposed to social media. So we need to
mm.
be very mindful about the activities that we are doing in the name of self-care.
Mhm. I like that. So basically, we have to understand that self-care it's a lifelong journey. It's actually something that is very individual. We have to know what's worked for us and to be really mindful about the type of activity that we define as self-care. Okay. Thank you for that. So, Dr. Haydin, so why is it so important that we have to practice self-care? What are the consequences, let's say, at the emotional level or physical level or in other aspect of our life that could become detrimental if we are not taking that in seriously.
I think in a very basic level, self-care is, to give an example, let's say you're not a trained person, right? And then you're expected to run a 10 kilometers, like run a 10-kilometer marathon. And it's like first time you're running, like, so you're putting your muscles into like an excessive burden, right? And the next day you would expect to have some muscle soreness, right? And then you would like give break. You wouldn't run again another 10-kilometer marathon. Maybe you never run again. Like this is gonna be a lesson for you, right? But it's interesting that I think with our brain sometimes we maybe we are missing like what our brain sometimes telling us, right? Of course, like you can. So I work in a mental health environment, so I prescribe medications. Sometimes anxiety, sadness, these kind of like emotions, they can be warning, like muscle soreness. So you can't always like medicate those kind of things. Maybe your brain is telling you to like take some time off, right? And like constantly moving, constantly running, you're not letting your brain to do its primary work, which is taking care of itself. It's kind of like a spectrum, like taking care of yourself. To the end of the spectrum is depression, where you have like active suicidal thoughts, when you start to think about like hurting yourself. Like it's the other end of the spectrum. So it's actually our brain to help ourselves and sometimes take some time off, rest, right? And what happens is if we don't listen to our brain or its warning enough or pay enough attention to them, we'll end up getting mental health disorders. I think that's not surprising, given that if you misuse your muscle, there's a good chance that you're going to break your bone.
Yes, it's like to really be conscious about the signals that our bodies are giving to us, and to really be in tune with that aspect. Thank you. Dr. Clark, how about you? Why do you think it's so important to really value self-care?
Well, there's a lot of talk these days about burnout, clinician burnout among essential workers during the pandemic, and just burnout in general among our global population, nationally, locally, and across nations. And so I think self-care helps us avoid burnout. We really do need to, as Dr. Aiden was saying, we need to listen to our bodies and understand, what kind of messages are they sending to us to really respond in a way that supports our function for the long term. I mean, being a graduate student is so hard, right? There are all these immediate responsibilities and tasks and activities and their deadlines that could fill, the encyclopedias of old times. And so it's important to really think in a way that is long-term oriented as well as short-term oriented, so that you don't experience burnout, because an immediate focus only on what you need to do currently can really lend itself to a limitation in understanding what your goals are more broadly and how are you going to meet them. And so a really good balanced approach, I think, can be very helpful.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So basically, it's really to understand that if to be wary of burnout, because we are aiming for the long run rather than just focusing on what's in front of us right away. Okay, thank you for sharing that. And how about you, Mrs. Jones?
So yeah, so one thing about it is that you got to look at it. You're charging your brain in the school workplace to continuously do what it needs to do in order to accomplish the goals of getting that A, right, in the class or a passing grade. But you also have to charge your brain to be able to stop and do something to relax it. And self-care is listening to music for maybe 30 minutes. And that's allowing that your brain to just to kind of calm itself down, because when you're at that work mode or you're at that mindset where you're trying to study for a test, your brain is going 90 miles an hour trying to figure out the solution to the problem, or try to figure out the answers to the exam that you're doing or the paper that you're writing. But you've got to take that moment to stop and say, okay, brain, I'm going to give you a break. Let's listen to some music. Let's go for a walk. Let's do some meditation. And that way it also gives you a chance to kind of stop, breathe, and recharge. So that's so important, because if you're constantly at a high charge, it's just like riding a car. The car runs out of gas and then there's no gas stations. So you got to be able to have something to replace what it is that you use.
To stop and recharge. Okay.
Absolutely.
I like that. Thank you. Dr. Clark, so when it comes to which tools which tools would you recommend? Wait, sorry, excuse me. Something's changed. Yes, sorry. Yes, so which tools would you recommend to graduate school students and postdocs to be able to use to try to promote self-care on a daily basis?
I think the tools that you need can be situational. So it really depends. If you're thinking about, I've got this exam I have to study for, you're going to map out that timeline and think about, where am I going to build in breaks? So sometimes it's about organizing your time. And so that could be situational. They would change over the course of your career, over the course of your training, over the course of your life. They may look different if you have children, or if you're caring for a loved one, or if you're dealing with an illness. So self-care is dynamic. And so to think about the specific tools that you would need, I think we have to think about, a more holistic approach. Some of them, though, that may span all of these different areas could include things like deep breathing. So deep breathing is known to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation part of our nervous system that helps us calm down. It's part of that fight or flight system, but it's on the opposite end where it helps us relax. We're thinking about how we're able to maintain homeostasis in this time. And so the deep breathing aspect really helps us tap into that parasympathetic nervous system in a way that will help to calm us down. And in particular, studies show that the amount of time that you spend in this deep breathing phase, so if you engage in diaphragmatic breathing, you take a deep breath in and then you exhale, and you're wanting your diaphragm to really move, not just your chest. And so the amount of time that you spend exhaling can really correlate well with the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. And so that really helps us, again, calm down. So engaging in those deep breathing activities, we can think about journaling. Gratitude journals are really fantastic. They're known to help us increase our dopamine levels. And so here, if you engage in a gratitude journal activity over the course of several weeks, maybe you journal, you take 15, 20 minutes at the end of your evening or at the end of your day to think about what really made this day work. What am I grateful for? That regular practice can, again, elevate our dopamine levels and contribute to a sense of well-being. Then we can sometimes use problem-focused approaches when we're dealing with issues that feel overwhelming. There's an approach that people really like. It's the AAA model, where it includes taking an assessment or being aware of the situation. So understanding how you're responding either in the moment or long-term. Are you carrying tension anywhere in your body? Is it specific to a certain event? And understanding what this means, and then taking action. Mm-hmm. How do you want to address the stressor that you're facing now that you've recognized it? And if you can't modify your environment or your situation, which actually is really quite helpful, if you're able, for example, to take agency around a situation, it gives you an enhanced sense of locus of control, which again contributes to well-being. But if there's nothing that can be done, what's recommended then is the third A, the acceptance, and to transition into acceptance of the situation as best as possible, but always being mindful about ways that you can, again, modify the situation, impact outcomes in a positive way. And so, I feel like self-care in these different domains can really contribute to some of our, again, increased sense of well-being, and connecting with others, because it frees up the space, it reduces your stress, and allows you to then prioritize things that will bring more added value to your life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So what I'm understanding is that self-care is basically the tools are situational and dynamic, and it has to be adapted to the context in which we are situating in the context in which we are. And tools such as deep breathing, gratitude journal, and problem focused approach can be some of the solutions that we might consider to help. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Dr. Aydin, how about you? Which tools would you recommend to graduate students or postdocs to be able to promote self-care?
I think there was a great point that Dr. Clark brought up, the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So those are autonomic systems of our nervous system that we don't have direct control. Indirectly, we might, of course, like have effect on them. But I tend to think sympathetic system as Dr. Clark mentioned, flight or fight system, or I also sometimes say it's like a hyperdrive system, right? You get like stronger, faster, because in the nature you need to either like run away from your predator, or you need to run to your prey to survive. So, but since it's like a hyperdrive system, you can't always keep it on for like I don't know, like 16 hours awake, right? So it says that you're consuming from yourself then. And also something that I enjoy doing is observing other animals. Of course, like we are like I'm like a tech savvy person, and I like to think like we share a lot of similar hardwares, if that makes sense. And I don't see them like running around all the day nonstop. I see them like once they, I don't know, like get their food or run away from this thing they are trying to avoid. Rest of the time, they just like sit for, I don't know, like for minutes, sometimes for hours. I think that's something also we might also need as well. We don't need to like, if that's not something that you enjoy doing, that's totally okay. But you need to find something for yourself that helps you calm down, relax, activates the parasympathetic system. And in the beginning, as I said, like being exposed to social media may not always be like a good way of relaxation, because you don't choose the stimuli that you are getting. We are already getting unlimited amount of stimuli during our workdays, notifications, emails, like whatever. So it's very important to be mindful during like how you feel, how are you reacting, are you tense in anywhere in your body when you are doing like this relaxing activity, right? And we can start from the basics if possible, like setting boundaries is a very good starting point. Sleeping, eating well, taking care of your body, listening to your body aches, headaches, or whatever. Like it shows like something that you are maybe like excessively using, and you may need to take some breaks. Very important social connections, family, friends. um, if I didn't say sleep, I made a huge mistake. Sleep is probably like as important as eating. and hobbies, and also like sometimes I think what I see most of the time, the people are most likely to burn out are the ones usually gaslight themselves for taking time for themselves. So
Mm.
maybe do not gaslight yourself. Like that's normal part of human being, and I bet like many people are going through the similar stuff. So it's okay to take time for yourself. And I agree with Dr. Clark's recommendation about the tools, deep breathing, meditation, relaxation, physical exercises, if that's your thing. Just pick one and try to stay with it.
Okay, I like that. So basically, we have to make sure not to be always to learn how to slow down, and not to guilt trip ourselves into slowing down, setting boundaries when we can, and and valuing the social connection that we have, reconnect with the people that we love. Yeah, thank you. Um, Mrs. Jones, do you have any tools that a graduate student and postdoc could use to promote self-care? I remember you mentioned listening to music, but any other additional activity that you might recommend?
So yeah, so I would definitely say travel. And travel doesn't always have to mean going into another country. It could be just, a place that's just a little ways from you, but it has a good view, that has a view of mountains, or it has a view of, a nice sunset, because it's taking you away from the things that you're stressful from, and then putting you in somewhat what we call that happy place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So definitely know what's your happy place and make use of it. And don't think that, oh, I have too much work to do, I can't go there. It'll keep me unfocused. But actually, it'll bring you back to being calmer to where you can focus more. So it's very important to definitely go into that happy place. And also I think that connecting yourself not only with friends and family, but staying in connection with people who have the same vision as yourself, because when you stay connected with people who have the same vision, and you have the same goals, and you're connected as far as in a support group, or whether it's a study group, that means that you're then having somebody who knows your vision, who's aware what it takes to accomplish that vision, and you can support each other. So I think that's very important, to have a connection within your school community, where you feel like, what, we can go and I can just vent and say, whatever it is, and they'll understand, and they can provide support, to be like, wow, okay, you feel that way too. Okay, I thought I was the only one. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it really makes a difference, so and tools is also a matter of just saying what makes you balance. And you got to figure out what works for you. If they run and they say, wow, that took a weight after me, that was a great run, that's one of your tools that balances you. And health wise, staying hydrated, it is so important to make sure that you're hydrated, taking your water with you throughout the day. And just staying because hydration, you'd be surprised that when you don't take time and hydrate and eat, then you're not going to be well for yourself or anybody else, because your body is going to shut down.
Thank you for sharing. So basically, if I understand correctly, you recommend us to be able to find your tribe, the people who will understand you, will support you, and provide and will be allow you to find a balance in life, and to reconnect with nature. We don't have to travel far. We can just go and see a beautiful sunset, and hydrate and eat to be able to still stay true to ourselves. Thank you for sharing that. And last has been the last question that I have for you before we jump to the audience question. So I would stay on you, Mrs. Jones. So what resources would you recommend to find truthful information about self-care? There's a lot of things on the internet, but are they books or website or organization that you think will be more inclined to give us um, if we
So,
want? I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no,
Sorry.
no, oh no, y'all, no, finish. So resources that are available is, there's a lot of resources, like sometimes through your ACM, the accredited case management services tends to provide resources for different conferences and things that they do as far as, self-care and how to perform in the workplace, and resources to be able to make sure that you're well in the workplace. And also you have your life coach sites too. They talk about different ways in which what you need to do to make sure that your life is going in the direction that you need to go in order to be well. Because if you're not, again, it's so important that sometimes we tend to forget about what it is to be well, because we're so focused on trying to accomplish that grade, right? But you still have to make sure that you're well. You have to make sure, physically, mentally, all that you're well. And other resources too is some of the educational websites, just main education websites will also give you some tools as well. So,
Okay.
going into some of the university resource websites will give you tools as far as self-care as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. Dr. Clark, I saw that you shared a link on the chat. Um, any other resources in addition to that?
Yes, I think that a lot of the comments that were shared are so excellent. Just adding to those, at Mount Sinai, we have some specific centers, of course. We've got the Office of Wellbeing. We've got I think it's Office of Wellbeing and Wellness. We have a link here to the Wellness Office. We've got, of course, which is really important, taking care of our mental health, the STMH, which supports health for students and trainees at Mount Sinai. I'm sure all institutions have similar resources. It's very important that we attend to these our mental health needs, as well as all of the other needs that we have, our social needs, again, our academic needs, because this is too part of our self-care.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Dr. Aydin, any additional resources that you would like to share with us?
I think all those were like great resources. And I'll do something different. I'm gonna recommend a book and the author. Maybe you already know him, Gabor Mate, and the book name is The Myth of Normal. So I think that's very like insightful about like how we consider things normal in our day-to-day life. So it can be an interesting thing if people want to see like how much like our day-to-day interactions actually affect us.
Okay, thank you so much. So now I'm going to leave the floor to the audience. We're going to try to look in the Q&A section to see if there are questions that are coming from the audience.
So I would suggest that maybe having just an app for a particular news source, mainly maybe a CNN app, and different things come up that's of important comes across the phone, but you don't have to be on a continuous watch. So you may, something may pop up, and then if it becomes of interest and it's something that you feel is important, you can read it. But if it's not popping up, you're not directly just on a continuous view of all the different things that's happening, but it's more of a spontaneous view if you're looking at it on an app situation versus actually watching it on TV.
I would also try to avoid hyperbole or inflammatory news resources, because they bring clicks. So people like inflammatory or hyperbole news commentary.
I definitely agree with those comments, and also earlier ones suggesting that we limit our time on social media, particularly the scrolling. I do it myself, and if you set a timer, and this is the amount of time I'm going to be on whatever app it is, and then you're done, right? I think it's too easy. These apps are developed for us to stay engaged, right? So we have to decide on what our personal limit is, and think about how these interactions are impacting us. Another way, I know that some news organizations like NPR or the New York Times or have small summaries of the most important news of the day. And maybe you sign up for the newsletter that they share, or I think the New York Times just has like a 5-minute summary that you can even listen to so that you stay informed, but you're not overwhelmed. And then there are also these outlets that provide positive news. And so maybe you might want to check those out every now and then. I mean, it's not something that you want to have as your only source of information, but it is nice to see where things are going well. And so I think having, this balanced approach can really be helpful.
Thank you for sharing. I'm personally like to read Upworthy, which is one of those positive website for news. Yes. Any other questions from the audience? Let me see. I do not. You
I
can
can,
oh, sorry, go for it. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, I can see it.
There's a great question in the chat. If you want, I'll read it. So it says, thank you so much. Going back to the guilt trip, for example, not working enough or too hard. How can we practically block these thoughts when doing leisure activities? I love this question.
Yes, it's a great question.
One of the things that, for example, you may come across in the mindfulness literature or Buddhist literature is the idea that our mind is like a little monkey. It's very active and playful and goes places it doesn't need to go. And so I think same thing, the same approach that you can take with limiting your activities on social media, you can limit your worry, the amount of time that you spend worrying. So maybe there's something that's causing you anxiety. And what we know is that worrying hasn't really ever solved a problem alone. It's really action and interaction that solves these things. And so, but at the same time, we have this little monkey in our heads, saying, but look at that, it's really scary. And so you can let that little monkey do its thing for maybe 5 minutes. And you can tell him, I'm going to do that, or her or them, I'm going to do that at 6 p.m. and we're going to finish at 6:10. And that's it. And so it takes a lot of, I think, practice to really engage in, recognizing what thoughts are coming up. But I think over time, again, if you engage in this as a regular practice, it's something that becomes easier with time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You can just jump in if you have anything to add related to that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Like I agree. Like the points of how to deal with this little monkey, and also sometimes like the little kids, the more you try to push or the more you try to silence them, it's gonna be like it's gonna try to be more loud. So sometimes just like acknowledge it and let it stay there. But the problem is try to distract yourself with the activity that you're doing right at that point. Let's say you go outside uh, with your friends to a cafe, then you get this thought, right? I know, like as a human reflex, we all first thing we try to do is to silence this thought. It usually doesn't work that way. The more you try to silence, the stronger it becomes. Like a little kid, just let it do its like tantrum or whatever. But also remind yourself like you are here to spend time with your friends. So try to distract yourself, and the less you fight, the like easier it's gonna become to like the sorry. I think I made it a bit complicated than I intend to. uh, it's okay to have these thoughts, right? Let these thoughts be there when you are spending time with your friends, but um, focus back on your friends, acknowledge these thoughts, they're okay, don't try to fight them, let them they stay there, whatever, but try to enjoy the activity that you're in.
okay. Thank you. Thank you. And there's another question in the chat. In a world when everybody wants to find a solution with a pill, what would be the one action about self-care that someone could focus on instead of redirecting its herself or himself to taking a pill. That one action um, that would be the trick to try to focus on.
Uh, if I had that pill, I would probably richest man in the world. But I think it's like so. Like one thing I would say, try to listen yourself more. I know it's very difficult if it's like the first time you're doing it, but I think that would be my first suggestion. Try to listen yourself more, and it's going to be difficult if you are doing for the very first time.
Okay.
And I also feel that you have to look at it in this way. Say if you are in a situation where you have an internship, which it requires for you to care for someone. If you don't do self-care for yourself and you're exhausted and you're anxious and all that, just think about what it's going to look like for that person that you're trying to care for. If you're in a healthcare type setting where you're actually doing an internship or resident of to care for someone, you have to be able to be fully aware. You have to be energized. You have to have, the ability, the motivation. And if you overcharge yourself with saying, oh, I don't have time to stop, to breathe, to run, and any of those things, then you're going to be at a point where you're going to be not caring for yourself. So my thing is, if you can't care for yourself, if you're not able to care for yourself, how are you going to care for somebody else? And you've got to kind of look at it that way. If I can't be there to do what I need to do for me, how can I present myself to do something for someone else? So it's almost like that thing about do as I say, not as I do type of thing. So you got to make sure, like, okay, if this is what I'm telling you to do, then I've got to do it for myself too.
Okay. Thank you so much. So since we are drawing near to the end of we are drawing near to the end of the hour, I would like to ask you, what is the take-home message that you would like to leave the audience with? And we could start with you, Dr. Clark.
Take home message. I think self-care, it's a really interesting thing. We live in a very individualistic society, but we don't spend enough time focusing on our needs. It's an odd contradiction. I think that particularly for women, this is a challenge. For folks who are underrepresented, this is also a challenge. And so recognize that it is important for all of us. Again, it's a mechanism for us to be more efficient, to be more effective, to achieve more when we actually do prioritize self-care. And self-care doesn't always look good, right? It can mean like I'm going to go to bed early so that I can make sure that I have all of these things in place for whatever I need to do. So it's just taking an approach, I think, that really does center yourself, your needs within your society and your community so that you can function and help your society and community function to its most optimal level.
Thank you for sharing that. To really focus our attention on our needs and not to feel guilty about it, to be able to be useful to our communities. Yeah. How about you, Dr. Aydin?
I think like we shouldn't like guilt trip ourselves for taking care of ourselves, and also we shouldn't blame ourselves for if like this is if the situation is because so if the situation is like much more complicated or difficult than we can handle. It's okay to also seek for professional help. Like self-care is not to replace professional help or other way around. It's more like they are hand in hand, right? So I don't want anyone here living like I'm doing all this self-care, but I still have like very irritable, very restless. I'm very sad. I can't even do so. I don't want anyone to feel like this. So self-care is not something that's replaced the professional help. And if it's not getting better, it's okay to seek professional help.
Okay. So basically it's to be in tune with our body and to make sure that when we reach that level where self-care doesn't work anymore, to not be ashamed to reach out and ask for help. And last and not least, Mrs. Jones, what is the take-home message?
So I would say a lot of times we tell behavior health patients to have a toolbox that is able to make it where you're able to be okay and make sure that you're safe. So I would say that take away some of the things that we have provided and put it in a toolbox for self-care. And when you're feeling that point where you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling anxiety and feeling stressed, it's okay, let me go into my toolbox, which is the toolbox is a safe space. It doesn't take away from anything that you're not doing anything right, but it's that place. Your self-care toolbox is where you can go and make yourself comfortable and you can make yourself recharged and you can make sure that you're able to really say, I did the best that I could do and I'm okay with it and not, stress about it. So definitely have a self-care toolbox. Not every self-care tool works for everybody. Find the one that fits for you. And when you get into that space where you're feeling overwhelmed, say, okay, let me go pull my tool of running. Let me go pull my tool of singing. Let me go pull my tool of meditation. And then come back and say, okay, you know what? Now that I've took my tool, I'm fixed now. I can start over.
Okay. Thank you so much. So basically, the action plan that we are leaving the audience with is to create the self-care toolbox. And when they identify that, yes, I really need that, to go and find their safe space, take a tool, try to to use it and try to get better. And hopefully it will be helpful at that time. And if it's not, to reach out for a professional help. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the time with us. I've learned so much about the topic of self-care. It was such an enriching conversation with experts like yourself. And it was my honor to be the host of this webinar, and I hope that you had a wonderful time with us as well.